Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karava Vahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, 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 and divine beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, Swayam, is it okay with you if we start with, go back, I guess we'd be going back a bit to start with the Sister Nivedita?
Yes, Brother Shankara, actually, that's what I was saying. We ended the previous paragraph. So the beginning is a little bit before Sister Nivedita.
Okay, well then why don't you just read into it? I
Okay.
thought we had read this with Sister Nivedita, but I just must have read it on my own.
Okay. The philosophy of Vedanta bridges the gulf between action and contemplation, work and worship, the secular and the sacred. This was the philosophy that Swami Vivekananda preached in the East and West alike at the end of last century. Highlighting its unifying vision, Sister Nivedita, Miss Margaret Noble, writes in introduction, our master and his message in Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, page 25. And this is what is now quoted from the book. The many and the one are the same reality, perceived by the mind at different times and in different attitudes. It is this which adds its crowning significance to our master's life. For here he becomes the meeting point, not only of the East and West, but also of the past and future. If the many and the one be indeed the same reality, then it is not all modes of worship alone, but equally all modes of work, all modes of struggle, all modes of creation, which are paths of realization. No distinction henceforth between sacred and secular. To labor is to pray. To conquer is to renounce. Life itself is religion. To have and to hold is as stern a trust as to quit and to avoid. This is the realization which makes Vivekananda the great preacher of karma, detached action, not as divorced from, but as expressing jnana, self-knowledge, and bhakti, love of God. To him, the workshop, the study, the farmyard, and the field are as true and fit scenes for the meeting of God with man as the cell of the monk or the door of the temple. To him, there is no difference between service of man and worship of God, between manliness and faith, between true righteousness and spirituality.
Okay, hold it right there.
And it does look like we read it, Brother Shankara.
Okay. Well, I thought we had, but it was worth reading it again, particularly for those people who weren't here last week. The point that was made is the points being made, or really the one point being made. Is there any comment from anyone, from your own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that this point of view raises? It's not different from what Krishna teaches in chapter 5 and 6 of the Gita, chapters 5 and 6 of the Gita. It's just expressed somewhat differently. So anything at all that anyone would like to say about this?
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
There is a sentence here. To him, there is no difference between service of man and worship of God. And that is very true. Manava sevaye madhava seva, which we have been always told. When you do seva to service to a human being, you are servicing God because everybody has godliness. I see that. That's a very profound statement. I thought I would just highlight it. That's all.
Thank you, yes. And it is at the heart
Yes.
of Swami Vivekananda's collection of talks published as Karma Yoga. I mean, that idea, if you remember in Karma Yoga, there's a section that ends with the calling out the butcher's Gita, the teachings of a butcher who achieved full realization by doing nothing more than serving his parents and conducting his trade with perfect integrity.
That's true. Thank you. Thank you, Brother.
Thank you, Haima.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
the other sentence that's very profound is life is itself religion, because through the experiences we gain knowledge. By serving man, we serve God. If we, I guess, focus on even like a particular area of our study, we are kind of doing Raj Yoga if we really concentrate. And which one am I leaving out? Bhakti, Karma, Jnana, and Raj Yoga, I guess. So basically, just by living life, we are kind of practicing these yogas.
Yes, particularly if we do it consciously. We'll be doing it unconsciously, as is pointed out by Sri Ramakrishna. There's no way not to live in the presence of the divine being that is within you. There is no way not to do that. But it is your awareness of it. If you turn your face away from that, that is your attention away from it, you're not aware of it. And so you may feel and act as if you are bound in Maya's snare. Anything else about this very profound statement? Now, the Swami quotes from this at such length because it is at the heart. You know, he also quotes earlier from the Gita and will quote from other scriptures and teachings. But this is the heart of what he's saying. And it adds up to the statement, to be fully human is to be fully divine. And so this is the message of this book, and this is the divine grace of which he's speaking, that we are in fact nothing but that divinity, which is how this little section from Vedanta, this is what it adds up to. So anything else from anyone? Okay, please read on, Swami.
Okay. Pointing out what such a unifying philosophy means to the emerging world and to all modern men and women, theists or atheists, believers or agnostics, I cannot do anything better than quote a moving passage, almost prophetic in spirit, from a lecture of Swami Vivekananda on the necessity of religion, delivered in London in 1896, from the Complete Works, Volume 2, 10th edition, pages 67 to 68.
You can,
So,
dear, as you're reading along, you can skip those citations.
okay. As the human mind broadens, its spiritual steps broaden too. The time has already come when a man cannot record a thought without it reaching to all corners of the earth. By merely physical means, we have come into touch with the whole world. So the future religion of the world had to become as universal, as wide. Future religions of the world. The religious ideals of the future must embrace all that exists in the world and is good and great, and at the same time have infinite scope for future development. All that was good in the past must be preserved, and the doors kept open for future additions to the already existing store. Religions must also be inclusive and not look down with contempt upon one another because their particular idea of God are different. In my life, I have seen a great many spiritual men, a great many sensible persons who did not believe in God at all. That is to say, not in our sense of the word. Perhaps they understood God better than we can ever do. The personal idea of God, or the impersonal, the infinite, the moral law, or the ideal man. These all had to come under the definition of religion. And when the religions have become thus broadened, their power for good will have increased 100-fold. Religions have tremendous power in them. Religions having tremendous power in them have often done more injury to the world than good, simply on account of their narrowness and limitation. Religious ideas will have to become universal, vast and infinite, and then alone we shall have the fullest play of religion. For the power of religion has only just begun to manifest in the world. It is sometimes said that religions are dying out, that spiritual ideas are dying out of the world. To me, it seems that they have just begun to grow. The power of religion, broadened and purified, is going to penetrate every part of human life. So long as religion was in the hands of a chosen few or of a body of priests, it was in temples, churches, books, dogmas, ceremonials, forms, and rituals. But when we came to the real, spiritual, and universal concept, then and then alone, religion will become real and living. It will
Could you
come
read
in.
that again, please?
Yeah,
From
I
but
made
when
it.
we come,
Okay. But when we come to the real, spiritual, universal concept, then and then alone will religion will become real and living. It will come into our very nature, live in our every movement, penetrate every pore of our society, and be infinitely more a power for good than it has ever been before.
now,
Spiritual
okay,
life.
wait.
Okay.
That ends the quote from Swami. Notice, if you will, that he says religion has just begun to express itself. Humanity is very young. We have formalized religion in the sense that he talks about here quite recently. And it's only since the development of writing that religions began to, so to speak, flourish as a part of human beings' lives. And so he's saying, rather than religions dying out because of the materialism of the modern world, this is just a phase, this materialism, this period we're living in, and that because the nature of reality is infinite, religion also is infinite and will continue to grow, flourish, and express itself. And as he says, penetrate every aspect, every pore of the human being and every aspect of society. So again, let's just pause and see if there are any comments or questions from anyone about what was said. Again, this is Ranganathananda remembering what Vivekananda said in this talk, which I believe was called The Necessity of Religion. And giving to us this great evocation, not only of the necessity of religion, but of the fact that religion is really, in terms of human beings and human society, in its early phases. Anything at all from anyone?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I think Swami Ranganathananda ji has used possibly the best word to describe this as prophetic in spirit, because this was delivered in 1896. And here we are today with all the internet and everything else, that so many more people are having the opportunity and the desire to learn. And in fact, I mean, more people are drawn to religious, spiritual way of life, I think.
Well, more people are becoming drawn to it. It's true. They again, they may express it in their own way. It may not be a way that we're used to, but they're growing it in their own hearts and in their own minds. And you're right, this is indeed prophetic, because he talks about the fact that it was already true that when knowledge was developed in any part of the world, it would soon spread to the whole of the world. That was true already in 1896. It hadn't been true a century before. Things moved very slowly. This is why Buddhism had to be a proselytizing religion, and Christianity had to be a proselytizing religion. They had to carry this knowledge from place to place, and the Christians, of course, imposed it, as did the Muslims. The Buddhists weren't that way, but they had to carry this from place to place. Now, as you say, it's something, a talk that is given in Boulder, Colorado, by Swami Ishatmananda is available to everybody in the entire world that has an internet connection. What a phenomenon. And as you say, very prophetic. Thank you, Swami. Anything else from anyone?
I feel like Swami Vivekananda is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Awfully darned optimistic.
Well, yes.
And I understand what he's saying, but what I feel like he's talking about, that which is to come as far as religion, permeating every bit of life, etc., isn't really religion as we think of religion.
Exactly.
It's gosh, I wish I could remember this. I've asked you this so many times. Who the Swami is who requested that John Lennon's Imagine be played at his memorial?
Swami Shantarupananda. Shantarupananda, the Swami who headed the center in Portland, Oregon, for so many years. He died a few years back of brain cancer. Yeah. There is a talk that he gave that is speaking of accessibility of things throughout time and space now. 2 weeks before he died, he gave a talk on the necessity of following your guru's instructions at at San Diego, the Vedanta Society of Southern California's San Diego Center. You can find it still on.
Yeah, I think I did find it. Would it have been in 2015?
That sounds about right. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, I that and what Swami Brahma-Vijayananda has devoted a lot of his time to, and probably still is. I haven't talked to him about it, but this Vivekananda's vision interpreted as moving beyond religion.
Moving beyond religion as we have known it.
Yes.
Yes. Precisely.
Because
and if you can find the lyrics to John Lennon's song Imagine on in our archive. It was read, those lyrics were read not so very many weeks ago. I don't remember in connection with what talk, but if you just go and in the search window type in John Lennon Imagine, you'll come up with the lyrics, but you can find them online anyway. And the reason that Shantarupananda wanted that to be sung, played at his memorial service was that it embodies much of what Vivekananda is talking about here. Religion in a whole different way of thinking, a true brotherhood of man. And of course, men and women, it's the brotherhood and sisterhood, but Lennon wrote of it as brotherhood of man.
and non-binaryhood. Um,
Yes.
the optimism, though, I feel like, again, how many millions of yugas, as it's called in Hinduism, before something like this would actually
Well, he's
manifest.
Vivekananda was of the opinion that it had already begun, that it began with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, and that it would manifest as part of the coming age, the so-called Satyug, the age of truth, or the golden age, and it would come to its fullest manifestation during that time, and then go through its process of limitation again as Dharma became more and more limited in its way of being in human beings over the following yugas. But that's inconceivable and not can't really be part of our conversation. That's just part of the mythology. The mythology, which does not mean it isn't true, but it is the mythology of the Vedas and what they say about these yugas. But Vivekananda's optimism, I don't think was an opinion. I think it was based in his vision, true vision of the future.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I had come across this YouTube video of Swami Ranganathananda being interviewed by some journalist, and I don't recall the details. But Swami Ranganathananda was explaining to this journalist that, at least as far as, I think, something about India and the modern happenings, and Swami Ranganathananda said that because of the various invasions, India had gone into a tamasic time, and now it's becoming more rajasic. People are waking up and wanting to satisfy their desires, and so there's a lot of rajas. And once that is satisfied, then there will be more of a satyug and sattva. That was sort of the gist of what he was trying to say in that interview.
Yes, I've seen that interview also, and yes, that is what he was saying, and it is also what Vivekananda said, more in his letters than in his talks. If you read Vivekananda's letters to his disciples and his brother monks, you see these kinds of prophecies. And he also said that as the star of the Western powers, Britain and the United States, set, that the two competing powers would be India and China, and that one of them would be predominant, and he did not say which. So certainly we're seeing some manifestations of that. Certainly the British Empire has essentially vanished, and the American Empire is certainly challenged. Anything else?
I think in that talk he also said that the influence that India will exert is not one of aggression, but more of this inclusiveness and the spread of spirituality. I guess I'm not using the right words, but I do clearly remember him saying that
Yes.
there will be no sort of aggression, but it's more of the...
No. India will defend itself militarily as necessary, but the influence of India will be as it has been throughout recorded history. I mean, Brahmins were invited to the Council of Nicaea in 300 AD by Constantine and his advisors. Brahmins from India were invited to that gathering in order to share their wisdom about how to form a religion that would be of benefit to the people of the Roman Empire and also exert a control over their inauspicious behaviors. And I don't remember the number that were invited, but the number 30 comes to mind. But that may be inaccurate, so don't quote me on it. But in any event, there were a considerable number. So India has been influenced. It influenced the Babylonians. It influenced the Egyptians. It influenced the Greeks. For that matter, it influenced the Celts. So that's how far-reaching the influence of India was. Anything else? All right, dear, please lead on. Swam?
Sorry, forgot to unmute myself. Spiritual life, according to Vedanta, thus covers the whole range of man's life, including its so-called worldly stage, when man is the sole and supreme agent of his life with no partner called God. Let me read that again. I sort of didn't read it that well. Spiritual life, according to Vedanta, thus covers the whole range of man's life, including its so-called worldly stage, when man is the sole and supreme agent of his life with no partner called God.
This is the part of life that Swami Sridharananda speaks of when he says we start from the position, I am. I am. And therefore, it's up to me to take care of myself and make sure that I'm taken care of and my family's taken care of, and by extension, my clan, my nation. All of these thoughts of self-interestedness are there. And it's perfectly natural, perfectly normal. And this is what the Swami is referring to. So please read it again in that context, dear.
Sure. Spiritual life, according to Vedanta, thus covers the whole range of man's life, including its so-called worldly stage, when man is the sole and supreme agent of his life with no partner called God.
No, thou art yet, as in Swami Sridharananda's formulation. We'll get to the thou art part as we move along here. Okay, please read the next section.
Yes. Section 5, Purushakara, its importance for child development.
Rushakara means self-effort.
When a little baby is born, we teach it self-reliance. We help it to build up its ego, its individuality, its physical, mental, and spiritual strength. We cannot teach the baby the highest philosophy of complete self-surrender. In fact, it starts its life with a complete dependence on nature. In the early days and months, physically, it is certainly dependent upon its mother. But the mother does not want this to continue further. She wants her child to be independent, self-reliant, then only can it grow to its fullest stature. When we are similarly only babies in spiritual life, we are taught by the Gita to depend upon ourselves, to be self reliant. Try to stand on your own feet, said the mother to you when you were a baby. The mother may hold you, if you like, all your life, but you will not obtain full development and fulfillment thereby. Your legs and feet must become strong. That comes only from exercises in self reliance and self confidence. That is a beautiful idea when applied to the education of babies. By such exercise in self reliance, we see the baby growing in physical strength and mental strength. And every time it grows in self dependence and feels stronger in self confidence, the mother feels happier and happier and encourages it more and more. She claps her hands when the child does something, and that encourages the child to further self effort. That is how a child develops its ego, its sense of individuality. Thus, it unfolds its own potentialities.
Such an important idea. He says, we are babies in spiritual life. And the Gita tells us to have this self-reliance, become strong in every aspect of our self-expression. And this requires something that is that daunts some people, that makes them hesitate. We must be willing to make mistakes. We must be willing. The mother cannot teach you how to walk. You have to, they can hold you upright, encourage you to do it, but you must do it, and then you will fall down. Then you will get up again and fall down. The same thing comes when you begin to learn to ride your bicycle. It's not going to be without incident. We have to be willing to skin our knees and bloody our nose. And this is where a lot of people get daunted, both in physical life and in spiritual life. Any comments or questions about that before we go on to the next section?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I think it is somewhat unfortunate that due to this competitive nature of a modern society, children are actually sometimes discouraged from exploring their potentialities.
Oh, yes, particularly if they're right brain dominant. Yes, they have to be able to do well on the tests. It doesn't matter. And if they're sufficiently right brain dominant, they're actually given drugs to, so to speak, correct their behavior. So you're right that this modern society, which emphasizes competition, and that your role in society is to be a producer and consumer, and you should have the tools and skills to do that. But don't go outside the bounds. That's the real meaning of No Child Left Behind. And it is a horror. You're so right, Swami. So right. Anything else from anyone?
So, is there any way to extrapolate that into the spiritual life? I guess spiritual life is different in the sense that it is up to the individual to realize the potentialities and nobody sets boundaries, as opposed to the
Oh, well, you're not coming from a dogmatic tradition, dear. if you were married to someone who is a very ardent follower of the Southern Baptist Convention, you would know about limitations. You, as a woman, would be limited indeed in any number of ways. Now, this happens in India also. I don't know the details and I don't want to go into it. But believe you me, a religion has its dogmatic aspects. And we see it is now a matter of great concern to many people what is happening in the Supreme Court with regard to what is referred to as Roe versus Wade. And the fact that the male side of humanity is about to reassert its ability to define women's role and her ability to make decisions for herself. So these things are very much a part of modern, real life. And I don't mean real life as apart from spiritual life. There is no real life and spiritual life. It's all spiritual life. It's all a spectrum of, as the Swami is just about to go on and point out to us, that it is a spectrum from this childlike learning of self-reliance and self-confidence to the expression of that, and then the understanding, oh, there's something beyond I am. Anything else from anyone?
It makes me think of the phrase that you said a lot, Brother Shankara, something like first bread, then baseball, then the Gita.
Yes, it's a quote from Vivekananda. First bread, then football. He used the term football, by which he meant soccer, not American football. First bread, then football, then the Gita. And that is the underlying message of this whole book that we're studying, this Divine Grace book. First, learn how to sustain yourself. First bread, overcome poverty, and it's know how to keep the wolf from the door. Then football. If you use the metaphor of football, football is among the most complicated team sports that human beings play, perhaps the most complicated, because it is so open and fluid, and so much is expected of each team member. It is a metaphor for the mastery of the game of life. That's what Swami Vivekananda meant by it. And so when we have come up through the Maslow's hierarchy, and we've learned how to sustain ourselves and mastered the game of life so that we're not constantly behind the 8 ball. We're the master of our fate rather than the victim of our fate. Then there is time to and the expression for what the deep teachings of the Gita is, which is strength, 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 to go onward, onward, onward. Thank you, Shara. Yes, first bread, then football, then the Gita. Anything else? Okay, please read on, Swayam.
Okay. Section 6, Purushakara, the opening note in the yoga song of the Gita. You must particularly note this truth about the training of the child, about its growth and development. Then only can you understand how we as children in religion should proceed. We don't.
Could you read that again from the beginning, please? From the title of the section.
Sure. Purushakara, the opening note in the yoga song of the Gita. You must particularly note this truth about the training of the child, about its growth and development. Then only can you understand how we as children in religion should proceed. We do not begin with surrender to God, but with this attitude of self-reliance, personal effort. Otherwise, we shall be stunted in our spiritual growth, as the child shall be if, instead of exercises in self-reliance and self-effort, it wholly resorted to complete dependence on its own mother, and the mother also encouraged it that way. Here is revealed the truth about man's spiritual growth as a continual education in unfoldment.
Please read that again.
Mhm. Here is revealed the truth about man's spiritual growth as a continual education in unfoldment.
Just as religion is infinite, its expression as spirituality is infinite, you too are infinite. All limitation is a dream. You are capable of unfolding essentially infinitely. There is no limit to who you can become. This is so beautifully expressed in Swami Vivekananda's talk called Christ the Messenger, that there is no limit to your unfoldment. And anything that discourages it, anything that tries to make you feel more limited, Swami Vivekananda said, contraction is death, expansion is life. And Bob Dylan sang it in the song. He not busy being born is busy dying. He not busy being born is busy dying. This is exactly the same message in a powerful song. Anything from anyone about any of all of that?
I heard of someone reference the human life before as being a continually unfolding lotus flower or lotus blossom.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes, we go from being a 2-petaled lotus to being a 1,000-petaled lotus. This is this symbolism of the lotus as it is used in describing the spiritual centers in the body as various kinds of lotuses. From a 2-petaled lotus to a 1,000-petaled lotus. Thank you, Shar.
The use of the word unfoldment is so profound and beautiful,
Yes,
even to just visualize.
yes, yes, exactly. Anything else from anyone? Okay, Swayam, please read on.
Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. And religion,
Please read that again, please.
Mhm.
This is a quote from Vivekananda also.
Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. And religion is the manifestation of the divinity already in man, says Swami Vivekananda. That is why the Gita, in its first part, exhorts all men and women through Arjuna. Then there is this shloka in Sanskrit, but I will just read the translation. Wherefrom has come upon you at this critical situation, this dejection, un-Aryan like, disgraceful, and not conducive to the attainment of heaven, O Arjuna? Never yield to this unmanliness, O Partha. It does not befit you. Casting off this mean faint-heartedness, stand up, O scorcher of your enemies. Stand up, assert your own manhood, your own womanhood. Develop your inner strength. What a beautiful, what a powerful teaching. Only in the Gita, among the world's scriptures, do you get this clear-cut teaching of self-reliance in life as the first great lesson of man's total spiritual life.
And believe me, when Ranganathananda said that in all the world's religions, this is the only statement of it in this way. He knew whereof he spoke, I'm sure. Anything from anyone? I'd like you to read that over from the beginning, Swayam.
Okay. That is, I'll start from education.
Yes.
Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man, and religion is a manifestation of the divinity already in man.
Perfection and divinity are our birthright. Perfection and divinity are our birthright. So education manifests the perfection, religion manifests the divinity. Okay.
Says Swami Vivekananda. That is why the Gita, in its first part, exhorts all men and women through Arjuna. Wherefrom has come upon you at this critical situation, this dejection, un-Aryan like, disgraceful, and not conducive to the attainment of heaven, O Arjuna? Never yield to this unmanliness, O Partha. It does not befit you. Casting off this mean faint-heartedness, stand up, O scorcher of your enemies. That's the end of the Bhagavad Gita lines.
Mm-hmm.
Stand up, assert your own manhood, your own womanhood, develop your own strength. What a beautiful, what a powerful teaching. Only in the Gita, among the world's scriptures, do you get this clear-cut teaching of self-reliance in life as the first great lesson of man's total spiritual life. When you come to the 6th chapter of the Gita, the chapter known as Dhyana Yoga, you will find this truth reiterated there. Raise yourself by yourself. Don't let yourself down, for you are your own friend. You are your own enemy.
And so the instruction is be your own best friend over and over, rather than talk to yourself as your own worst enemy, which so often all of us do. So often. Talk to yourself as your own best friend, as you would talk to your friend in any given situation, your best friend, the one you loved the most, the one that you felt the most confidence that they would hear you clearly. Speak to yourself this way. This is what Sri Krishna is saying. Any comments or questions? Okay. Raise yourself by yourself. The Buddha said it, be a lamp unto yourself. Raise yourself by yourself. Don't let yourself down. For you are your own friend. You are your own enemy. Okay, read on. We've just got a few minutes left here. We'll start here again next week, but you can read what comes next.
Okay. How can it be that I'm my own friend or that I'm my own enemy? The next verse clarifies it. When one has conquered oneself, in parenthesis, when one has thoroughly disciplined mind and sense organs, one has become one's own friend. But when not so disciplined, one becomes, as it were, one's own enemy.
So please read that again, and that's where we'll start with how can it be next week.
When one has conquered oneself, when one has thoroughly disciplined mind and sense organs, one becomes one's own friend. But when one is not so disciplined, one becomes, as it were, one's own enemy.
And that's what I mean when I say become your own best friend. When you find that you are in an undisciplined state, when you find that you're in a dejected state, any of these things that come upon us, your best friend wouldn't discourage you. Your best friend wouldn't criticize you. They would find a way to be loving and empathetic and encouraging. And that's what we need to be for ourselves. So we'll start there next week. How can it be that I am my own friend or that I am my own enemy? Any comments or questions from anyone about anything we've read or discussed yet this evening?
The language of compassion class that I'm part of beautifully teaches how to be this friend who who encourages and listens. It's getting a little more rare these days because most people want to just jump in and give you the solution, or
yes, as if they really understood.
right.
As if they really understood.
Right.
How sad. Because what they're doing is they're expressing their impatience.
Exactly.
Oh, don't be that way.
Yeah.
pull yourself together and be the person I want you to be. And so here's how to fix it.
I feel a little bit like this is putting too much on this ideal friend, because friends are human beings, and your inner friend is going to be only as nice to you as you've allowed friends thus far to be. And a lot of the voices in our head that are our enemies or that are negative, they're not bad friend models, they're bad parent models. And if we keep, they're the loudest ones. Almost always they're the loudest ones. And until we can become our own parent or guardian and replace those negative voices, it's going to be hard to just be our own best friend. That's just too tall of an order for so many, probably the vast majority of us.
Okay.
Without working on that first.
Fully heard, fully accepted. It's just a lesson I'm working on for myself. And so it's one that I voice emphatically because I'm doing that with myself.
One of the practices that we do in the group session in Language of Compassion is how to offer self-empathy.
Yes,
and it's a beautiful stepped process, and it's really helpful for me.
Good. All right. Anything else from anyone, dears?
I just the every time we come to this part about conquering oneself, I think of our friend here in town, Dr. Lee, the traditional Chinese medicine doctor, because he talked about that a lot, about conquering yourself, which I think he meant very much the same sort of thing. Don't worry about what other people are doing, or you need to conquer yourself, or conquer meaning control.
Mm-hmm.
Through discipline and having a disciplined mind. And I thought that was real interesting.
Yes. Well, he's coming at it from a Confucian Taoistic point of view. I mean, I know that because that's what he told me. So he absolutely, yes. Thank you, Cindy. Anything else from anyone? And we'll get such wonderful encouragement from Swami Ranganathananda as we go on and how to make this process work. All right. Dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, "Come to me, come to me," offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Peace, 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 and holy beneficence to each of us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So there will be no Saturday class. I have to be out of town that day. But on Sunday, we will talk, or there will be a talk. And the title of the talk is A Godward Turn? Question mark. A Godward Turn. And so see you again as soon as suits yourself, your great and wonderful self, as the Celts would say. Any final thought from anyone else? All right, dears. Until next time, blessings.
Thank you.
Sayonara.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Shankar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your lovely reading, Swayam.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for giving the opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, dear. Bye all.